And welcome back to coverage here of the 2020 season grand finals. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. And Paul, we're transitioning now over to historic. And in the feature match area, we have two players in a very privileged position. We've got Seth Manfield and Burchett having crushed the tournament thus far. They are in a winning in right now this round for top 8. And even if whoever loses this match still gets to play win-and-ins for the rest of the tournament as well, as these players are 7-2 in a small field tournament, really well positioned here to make a run. Now, interesting matchup here in historic, Jund Sacrifice in the hands of Seth Manfield, a deck that a lot of people thought would show up in big numbers. It ended up showing up in the tournament, but not really in huge numbers. Burchett, though, they have Omnath Ramp with 2 copies of Yasharn main and 2 copies in the board, which, I mean, this has to be one of the best matchups for Autumn, given that they're main decking Yasharn, right?
Well, yes and no. So the way I look at it is, if you're going so far as to play something like Yasharn in your main and also in your sideboard, that also tells me that the matchup is not necessarily a cakewalk, right? Because you felt the need to play a card like that into your deck. However, if Autumn does draw Yasharn, yes, Seth does not have a whole lot of ways to interact, especially game 1. No removal spells to actually get Yasharn off the battlefield. But then after sideboard, as we saw in his match against Luis Scott Vargas, he will be bringing in cards like Red Cat Melee and other removal spells to deal with the card. The very important thing here in this matchup is Seth does not want this game to go to the late game. Seth wants to get those early starts with Dreadhorde Butchers and kind of get his engine going quickly, because as the games go along, I mean, look, there is no game that goes long better than this 4-color Omnath deck. I mean, take a look at the Genesis Ultimatum sitting in Burchett's hand. What spell can compare to resolving something of that power level? So Seth really, really wants to get the ball rolling early, really wants to see Dreadhorde Butcher specifically kind of in his opening hand, especially on the play, and also wants to make sure that he has some ways to kind of deal with Lotus Cobra early, because that's kind of card that allows for Autumn to have some explosive starts.
Yeah, and you see that here, the Dreadhorde Butcher trading off. And look at this, Seth with a tough decision. He's going to run out the Mayhem Devil off of the untapped Stomping Ground, but will not have untapped 4th mana, at least as the hand sits right now, for a Collected Company with that Sheltered Thicket in hand. Now, Seth, of course, could just draw an untapped land and then go right into Collected Company here. But worst case scenario, just slam another Mayhem Devil.
That would be huge.
Ooh, it's a Witch's Oven. Still, not the worst case scenario here, as Manfield gets to crack in for 3, add another Devil to the battlefield, and set up for an extremely powerful turn next turn with a Collected Company coming down. Can Autumn do anything about it? Because we know how things go. You hit well off your company and the game could be over on the spot.
Yeah, and that second Mayhem Devil was so big because Burchett now has an Uro, which does a good job of kind of padding your life total and helping you ramp. However, it is a sacrifice effect. So when you do play out that Uro, that life gain kind of gets negated a little bit, because they will be taking 2 damage here if they do run it out.
Okay, Escape to the Wilds means that there's not going to be that much more as far as fireworks go on Burchett's side of the battlefield, just a land drop to give. But back to Seth Manfield, who now has double Mayhem Devil with Collected Company and has to decide how to proceed from here.
So with Dreadhorde Butcher off the top, if Seth Manfield attacks, he's going to be able to get in for 7 points of damage. Then if he sacrifices the Dreadhorde Butcher, he's going to be able to get in for an additional 4 points of damage. So he's actually 1 point short of lethal this turn. So curious to see if he's going to go for that option, run out the Dreadhorde Butcher into the Witch's Oven, or just run out a Collected Company and see if he hits 2 really relevant threats.
Hello, how about 2 very nice ones here, a Woe Strider and a Priest of the Forgotten Gods, in for 6. This feels lethal to me.
And this is lethal, right?
Yeah.
So now Seth attacks for 6, sacrifices Priest of Forgotten Gods and the token. That's 4 damage. Then you sack a Mayhem Devil, and that's an additional 2 points of damage.
So that's plenty enough to get the job done here for Seth Manfield. Boy, no Yasharns to be seen. A little bit of a hiccup there from Burchett. Yeah, they cast a good spell, right? Escape to the Wilds is one of the more powerful options, but with no board state to speak of, they didn't really have that much wiggle room under significant pressure from double Mayhem Devil. And yeah, that was it. You just can't take a turn off against a deck like this.
Yeah, it's extremely important to find one of those 4-mana creatures to at least be able to put up a blocker in the way before you try to go up with Escape to the Wild. So cards like Omnath or that Yasharn would have been huge, but given Autumn Start, where it was only just kind of ramp spells and then into Escape to the Wilds, with Seth going first, falling a little too far behind.
So we are over here on to Autumn's turn. Is this just Seth gathering a little more information? Or did we miscount or something? What happened?
Maybe
there?
Was there a miscount here?
4.
If you sack the Mayhem Devil, does it not count itself?
It does.
Yeah.
Because it looks like he's targeting Omnath here. I thought maybe there would be some reason to wait. We must be missing something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've learned, I've learned in the past, whenever there's a situation like this, it's usually something that I'm missing. So I felt like it was 6. You sack the token for 2. You sack the priest for 2. Then if you sack the Mayhem Devil, I believe it counts itself when you sack it. And then the other one should also count it, right?
Yeah.
Let's see if Chad can confirm it.
Chad says that it was lethal. That it was in fact
he had 7
damage total available if you wanted to go for the last devil as well. Well, let's see how this plays out now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, because what Seth's decided to do here is let Omnath hit the battlefield. And Autumn must just be going, what is going on here?
And, you know, Seth is still in pretty good shape here, right? I mean,
yeah.
Autumn still can't do much here, maybe. But the thing is, there's no, like, probing for more information either, right? Because the players have access to deck lists.
So this is one
look at Autumn. Autumn just shook their head. They were like, what's going on? Why didn't Seth just kill me?
Huh.
All
right. Well, ultimately, game 1 does go to Seth Manfield there. The rare instance where chat lethal also equaled actual lethal. And Seth picks up game number 1. Now, zooming out just a step here, Paul, I'll remind you, these players sitting at 7-2, they're playing a win in. That was Seth 1 win away from joining Austin Bursavich in the top 8. So very, very big game 1 victory there for Manfield, who only needs to pick up one of the next 2 to secure that seat. So another potential top 8 on the books here for Seth Manfield with just 1 game win over Autumn Burchett out of the next 2.
Yeah, and if you can see after sideboard, Seth bringing in a ton of cards here. You see the 4 copies of Thoughtseize that Seth has in his sideboard. They're all coming in because oftentimes that is how you want to attack ramp decks, right? They have lots of ways to build up to mana, but oftentimes you can just sometimes get them by just nabbing their top 10 threats out of their hand with Thoughtseize. And additionally, having removal spells for the Yasharn, because we know that Autumn is most definitely going to be boarding up to 4 copies of that card. This is the primary reason to play Yasharn in your mid-range decks.
Chat says Seth was just asserting dominance.
Okay.
I'm going to say no on that one.
Yeah. I know Brad Nelson had mentioned on social media that perhaps he should have tested this deck before he audibled to this deck at the last minute. I don't know if that was a team decision to also switch to this deck at the last minute. Mm-hmm. That might explain what we saw in that last game.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, to be fair, the Jund Sacrifice deck is a very difficult deck to pilot. Playing it online on Arena does help a bit. as the triggers are managed for you for the most part. But the sequencing and the timing on when you actually make those triggers happen is really, really important. And in that game, it didn't end up being, but it can be.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Game number 2 is upon us. Seth Manfield taking a look at the opener here. Autumn looks like they're on a mulligan to 6.
But a solid hand, right? They have the turn to explore. They have the Clarion to stop some early aggression. So the important thing for Autumn is just continue to keep hoping to try to draw lands off the top. And that deck does play a ton of lands, so very likely to be able to do so. But for example, if Autumn can chain 2 lands in a row with that explore next turn, then we're going to be looking at an escape to the wilds here on turn 4.
Yeah, there's a land off the top of the library. Autumn looks like they're considering running an explore out, or perhaps if it's just necessary to Clarion. All right, well, it was an Uro and get that forest into play, but not a second land off of the explore there.
Yeah, I think Autumn was considering just running out the forest first, then tapping the forest into Stomping Ground to run out the Explorer, or excuse me, forest in the mountains, so that if they did draw another untapped land, they could just run out of Deafening Clarion to get rid of that Dreadhorde Butcher.
Makes sense. Yeah, the window closes quickly, right? This Dreadhorde Butcher is going to attack again and be a 3/3, and then it's kind of like use it or lose it time for Autumn. Interestingly, Manfield has really awesome decisions to make here. A second Dreadhorde Butcher, getting those going, where even if they get swept away, you could live with it, or perhaps a Mayhem Devil to go for maximum power. In this case, it's going to be Priest of Forgotten Gods, which is probably the best case for Burchett, right? You just get the 2-for-1 here.
Yeah, and I think Autumn probably just has to run out the Clarion here. I know it might be tempting to just run out Escape to the Wild, but that Dreadhorde Butcher will be a 4/4 next turn. Then all of a sudden your Clarion won't be able to get it off the battlefield.
Right, so there you go. But a land for Autumn Burchett means that next turn, yeah, we could see Escape to the Wilds as Autumn tries to start enacting the late game for what their deck has going on. On the bottom part of the screen, Seth Manfield going to have to settle for a Woe Strider and a land here. Not too exciting.
Yeah, and this is exactly what, I mean, after sideboard, this just seems to go much better for Autumn, because the way that they lose is if Seth gets off to that really quick start, because again, I believe that the ramp deck just has a more robust late game strategy, right? So by boarding in the 4 copies of Deafening Clarion, all of a sudden you don't have that risk of just getting run over by those Dreadhorde Butchers, or rather the risk is minimized because you do now have some interaction with that card.
All right, Autumn's got Grafdigger's Cage. That shuts off some of the things that Seth is trying to do.
Yeah, I think it stops exactly the 1 card, and that's, oh no, not 1 card, excuse me, 2 cards, Woe Strider, and of course, Cauldron Familiar, returning Cauldron Familiar from the graveyard.
Red Cap Melee off the top for Manfield.
Yeah, and Manfield just kind of stuck in this awkward mana situation where he's not really able to double spell here. Everything just costs 3 mana. And typically when you do build collective company decks, you do want most of your creatures to be 3 mana because you want your collective company hits to be powerful threats. But that also there will also be scenarios where you don't draw the company and you won't be able to have, you won't be able to sequence your spells in such a way where you can deploy everything at once.
Right. And of course, in this case, Manfield doesn't want to have anything to do with Collected Company now that Grafdigger's Cage is on the battlefield. Interestingly, another card it shuts off is Uro, which is unfortunately on Autumn's in Autumn's hand here. Not that you can't still cast it from your hand and just sort of get your little value play there, but you're not going to get Uro out of the graveyard on escape with that cage out either. Yeah,
Grafdigger's Cage is one of the most impactful cards. Given the metagame of Historic, we've seen the various Azorius control decks just play it main deck because they don't get affected by it, and it's just good against so many different strategies. And you even see decks where it does kind of hurt you sometimes still play it because of how powerful that card is.
Yeah, and you see that here. But again, you know, if Seth Manfield draws Collected Company, Autumn Burchett is like, sweet. If Autumn Burchett draws Uro, it's like, fine. You know, you're not going to get to take over the late game with it, but I mean, casting it from your hand and getting the card back, a land drop, and some life is no big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the deck has just plenty of ways to win. You don't really need Uro. Uro just happens to be another nice ram card that does give you that backup strategy, but I think Autumn identifying that there is more value in being able to shut off the cat oven combo than worrying about not being able to return Uro from the graveyard. There are also situations where you can return the Uro first and then play Grafdigger's Cage.
So this is interesting. This board has actually gotten a bit out of hand here. Seth Manfield has Dreadhorde Butcher, and there's also a Mayhem Devil there as well. This is a big hit.
Yeah, so this is an attack for 7. Then we have a Mayhem Devil that Seth can run out. Now, if Seth sacrifices the Reaper, the Butcher, and the Devil, that should be 5 damage.
Yeah. 2, 3.
So every creature is 1 damage.
5. Right. And then 2 extra for the Dreadhorde.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So not quite lethal yet. And the nice part about the situation that Seth is in right now is the fact that even if Autumn does play something like a sweeper, he's got that Midnight Reaper on the battlefield. So he will be able to kind of fill up his hand again.
It does look like Seth is considering whether to run out this Mayhem Devil.
Yeah, well, the reason he's not sure about running it out here is because he sees that Omnath that's been exiled via the Escape to the Wilds, and he wants to make sure that he has an answer before you get multiple landfall triggers off that Omnath.
Boy, very, very close one. Seth with the ability to get Autumn down to 2 life, but can't quite finish the game. And this is a huge sigh of relief for Autumn Burchett, who just gets to untap with the world here. Omnath, a ton of lands, super hand. Yeah, this could be huge.
And Autumn has to probably feel like Seth has a removal spell in hand. So it kind of has to figure out, you know, the sequence of Omnath into fetch land is probably not going to work out in the sense that they're unlikely to be able to get the mana, right? It would be very tempting to go Omnath, Fabled Passage, sack, play Ugin. But if you think Seth has a removal spell, it all crumbles apart because you won't be able to cast the Ugin. So instead, Autumn going for the Ugin here.
Wow, goes for Ugin. And is going to run the minus. But the problem here is the Woe Strider is going to let Seth get actually quite a bit of value here. And I'm curious to see where the Dreadhorde Butcher trigger goes as well. If Seth believes that he can find a win, we'll see it go upstairs. If not, we may see the Ugin start to soak up some of this damage if Seth doesn't see a win next turn.
Well, the thing is, Red Cat Melee actually deals damage to Planeswalkers too.
Okay.
So he can actually just choose to deal 2 points of damage to Autumn if his plan is to just get that Ugin off the battlefield. I don't think you want that Ugin in play. And if you don't want that Ugin in play, you might just want to fire off Red Cat Melee on the Ugin.
Yeah, it looks like Seth is gonna hit Ugin with the 2 damage, perhaps wanting the melee for Omnath as a clean answer.
He does have the Noxious Grasp in hand for Omnath.
Oh, true. Well, it looks like he just wants to conserve as much resources as possible then.
Yeah, of course, sacrificing a land is a pretty steep cost to get that Planeswalker off the battlefield. But at the same time, I mean, what are you going to do with this Ugin, right? Don't you want to get that off the battlefield as quickly as possible? Do you really want to allow Autumn to untap here with an active Ugin in play?
Yeah, that's a rough sell. It can basically kill anything you've got going. But also, we have to remember that Seth is picking up quite a few cards here, thanks to that Midnight Reaper, and may just have a great turn lined up anyway. So Ugin's going to end up at 2. Yeah, kind of awkward here. Because it looks like Autumn's done for the turn. And Seth ends up leaving Ugin on the battlefield and is going to need to either scrap together 2 more kind of incidental damage, or he's going to actually have to use the red cap melee.
I would hate to see him use that red cap melee. It would not make a lot of sense to me.
No.
For him to deal 2 points of damage to the Ugin and then follow that up with the red cap melee on the Ugin, unless he thought there was another way to somehow find 2 damage off of his draws to kill the Ugin.
Well, it looks like Seth has just passed the turn back, and Autumn gets to untap with active Ugin.
Yeah, so
after having
now
swept the board.
Yeah, and now Autumn can Clarion, get rid of the board, tick up Ugin, and then also just start cycling through their deck with the Triome and then the Uro in their hand.
Boy, this has not worked out well for Seth Manfield. Autumn, Burchett looking to even things up at a game apiece and force just the one game to decide which of these 2 players ends up making it into top 8. Let's see if they can do it. Looks like they're not going to. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So basically, Autumn did that to prevent Seth from drawing an additional card because they recognize that going 3 to the face doesn't really matter. So choosing to kill the Midnight Reaper first makes sense here. So it denies Seth of a card.
Right. Okay. Then they're going to play the Clarion to get rid of that key card, the Mayhem Devil. Here comes Uro. But we will remember that Grafdigger's Cage on the battlefield on Autumn's side. So this is just a one-shot Uro. And then probably a lot riding on that Triome to find action. Look, Ugin is great and will win the game if left unchecked. But Autumn would prefer to find some other big late game card to kind of finish it.
Seth can still kill this Ugin. Unless I'm misreading the card. Wait, I'm bringing it up. 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right, Paul. Seems like that. Seth must be missing that, right?
Yeah,
that explains everything that we've seen.
The thing is, Red Cat Melee mostly kills creatures, right? You almost never see it kill a planeswalker.
Right.
Especially, you never see Red Cat Melee go up against specifically Ugin. That matchup just never happens.
Look.
Oh, no.
Is he reading it now? Did Seth just read it now?
Yeah, he did.
He's like, oh, no. Game back on. Now, is it possible that it's correct for him to throw 2? This is going to be an oops, by the way.
I mean, look, he's going to double Red Cat Melee here and play Mayhem Devil. Yep. Oh, no.
Oh. Okay, so is this a case of better late than never? Because
look, don't bother trying to save face here. Just do the play. Look, Autumn has nothing. Autumn
is out of gas.
Seth is just going to play this Mayhem Devil and kind of hope for the best.
Autumn must just be thinking, what is going on? You just had that card in your hand.
Wait, why didn't Seth play Mayhem Devil first? If you play Mayhem Devil first,
then you get 2
damage. Oh my God.
No. This is just falling apart for Seth Manfield.
What is happening?
I wonder what's going through Autumn's mind right now. They must just be going like, is this really Seth Manfield on the other end?
Look.
This happens to everybody, right? It's just we're so not used to seeing it happen to Seth, but it really does happen to everybody. I swear, I've seen it. You watch enough streams, you watch enough high-level Magic, and you will see the best possible players make mistakes that you didn't think that they could make, like reading the card or not sequencing correctly. It does happen to the best. The question is, can Seth dial in, right? Because we know he's one of the best players in the world, full stop. And yes, he had a bit of a stretch there where it wasn't really coming together for him. Can he get back on track, or is it too late? And it might be too late for this game. Yeah,
it is too late. That is a Kenrith with all the mana in the world.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to see a very dialed in and a very focused Seth Manfield for game number 3. As Autumn, they must just be going, what in the world just happened?
Oh no.
Look
Yeah.
at Seth.
Look, I mean, this is proof. Even the best players, and Seth, just because you see this right now, don't. He is one of the best players in the world. Okay, and it just proved that this can happen to anybody, right?
Yes.
And now that he knows, I wouldn't even be surprised if somehow now he uses that to win the next game.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things. You make every mistake once and learn from it and move on. That's how you get better. And this is probably just one of the weird interactions. I mean, I had to look up the card myself just to make sure, because everybody just thinks Red Cat Melee deals 4 damage to red creatures, right? So.
Crazy. I bet you, being one of the best players in the world, Seth, he probably compounded all of his mistakes into one game strategically.
And then next game is going to be flawless.
Super clean next game, yeah. Because that would be how you would do it, right? You'd want to get all those mistakes.
So he did the Red Cat Melee thing, and then he sacked the 2 lands, and then he was like, wait,
oops.
I could have dealt 2 more points of damage. So, yeah, it all...
I mean, that was critical because Ugin was on 6 loyalties, so that would have been enough, eventually, like a free
he would have been able to
damage.
keep... Oh, no, he wouldn't have, because he sacked 1 permanent, it would have been 5 damage. Yeah, it would have been 5 damage.
No, free damage is free damage,
Yeah, no, for sure. But I thought maybe there was some weird sequence where he gets to keep the Red Cat Melee, which would have gone that other Omnath off the battlefield. But I don't think it would have mattered because Autumn found the Kenrith.
That's right. And there was, unless there was a creature, there wouldn't have been. But, okay, let's do it. Gets again into game number 3. Autumn Burchett versus Seth Manfield. Both of these players are 7-2, which means this victory by either Autumn or Seth will put them into the top 8 of the tournament. Good start here for Seth, firing off with the Dreadhorde Butcher into an empty board currently. But we see a very good start for Burchett as well with the Explorer into a land.
Yeah, I mean, look at how valuable these Deafening Clarions are, right? I mean, there's not really a great way for Seth to play around it outside of drawing Thoughtseize. Like, he has to continue to add pressure, and he has to play a creature this turn. Probably the Midnight Reaper, because it is a good way to play around the Sweeper.
Card back. Buy one, get one free. Autumn Burchett, though, really forced to fire off the Clarion here, right? The Dreadhorde Butcher's already a 3/3, and if they wait a turn, too late.
Yeah, and this is great for Seth because Seth needs to find lands, because if he does, he will be able to fire off with Collected Companies.
Good point. Seth almost happy with this exchange. Gets both cards back and 3 damage upstairs. There's a Sheltered Thicket. Not quite it, but Blood Crypt. Yes, that will do it. And I'm curious to see Seth fires this off. Look at this clean play from Manfield. Going to fire it off in the main phase here, not messing around with that Ether Gust that Burchett has.
Yeah, no, super heads up. Burchett has 3 copies of Ether Gust in the sideboard, so wants to fire this off now. Not only that, as you can see, he's also playing Dreadhorde Butcher. If he hits that card, he wants to make sure he hits it on his main phase so he can get that counter on the Butcher.
Yeah, curious to see. Good choices here for Seth. Woe Strider, Priest of Forgotten Gods, Dreadhorde Butcher, and Mayhem Devil. The Devil seems inevitable, right? Like that's the card that you kind of always want to hit. No, it is not inevitable. It is going to be Woe Strider and the Butcher. I spoke way too soon there. Butcher gets in for 1, jumps up to a 2/2, and Seth is going to pass a turn here with a rebuilt board.
Yeah, and the reason to go for the Strider here is because Seth currently doesn't have a way to sacrifice any of his creatures. So having the Woe Strider in play first, and then playing out the Mayhem Devil on the following turn means he can kind of control where all of his sack targets go.
So this was a case of Seth already having Mayhem Devil in hand and needing the other pieces to make it work. Makes sense.
Yeah, and this is the window here for Seth to potentially be able to win. So, got to do some math here, but we have Woe Strider getting in for 3, Dreadhorde Butcher getting in for 2. That would put Autumn down to 8. Sacrificing the Butcher is 3, the token is 1, and then the Mayhem Devil is another 1, so not quite enough.
So 12 damage? Well, that's really close.
So
it's to the point where a Collected Company could win.
4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6. Oh, and then there's a Priest.
Autumn.
7 damage.
All they can do is look on. Yeah, it puts Autumn down to 1. Autumn sitting here with really a rough one. Land, 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 and then Growth Spiral, Explore, and more lands. The only interactive spell right now is 1 copy of Ether Gust. That's really the only card that does anything.
Yeah. And typically the way that these ramp decks are able to kind of get away with these aggressive matchups are all those incidental ways to gain life. You have your Uros and your Omnaths to kind of help pad your life total, to kind of help you get to your late game, but Autumn hasn't found those.
Another land? Wow.
Yeah, Autumn is in a lot of trouble.
Really badly here. Yeah, this is rough. You know, normally an Escape to the Wilds, if you're kind of flooding out, feels not that bad because you get to hit your extra land drop guaranteed and it'll find you a bunch of action. In this case, it found more lands and more ways to find more lands. Meanwhile, Autumn was drawing lands that whole time too. So this is rough.
Yeah. This deck is mostly lands and ways to find more lands and then a handful of win conditions. But yes, Autumn really needed to find some of those impactful spells over the last 2 turns. Great start with that Clarion on turn 3, but it really didn't slow down Seth much, given that the creatures that he lost were just immediately replaced, given the Midnight Reapers that he played on turn 3. So I think Autumn is at this point probably just looking to try to draw into a Deafening Clarion. And
so they're going to Herald Passage first.
Thin out the deck, play and Explore, try to find Clarion, but then of course Seth has the follow-up in Collected Company, and Autumn will still be taking 3 because the Dreadhorde Butcher will be dying.
Okay, here's the Explore. This could be the last chance here for Burchett to get back in this thing, and somehow it's another land. My goodness sakes. I mean, these are land-heavy decks, so this happens occasionally, but wow, that's a lot of lands.
Yeah, I mean, Seth is going to win. Seth is going to win at this point. There's just not a whole lot Autumn can do. Autumn has an Ether Gust, but Seth is going to go end of turn Company. You're probably going to have to gust that. Then Seth just has a lethal attack.
Yep. Burchett surveying the scene here, trying to see if there's any possible way out of this mess. But from our seat, doesn't look like it. Looks like Seth Manfield may be securing that top 8. Now, I will remind you, no matter who loses this match, they are still playing win-ins for top 8 for the duration of the day. So the wheels would have to really come off to not make it still a few more rounds to get in.
Yeah, still 2 more rounds. And Autumn was very, very excited about their deck choice for this tournament, saying that they mostly tested Historic and kind of let their teammates be the ones to kind of break Standard, which, you know, they've done a really good job with Standard. Had a really impressive record coming into day 2.
Yeah, that Gruul deck did very well. Here comes Collected Company from Seth. But as you mentioned, Autumn, no, not even going to go for it here. Just going to go ahead and let the Collected Company ride.
Yeah, I just want to put 2 3-power creatures on the battlefield here, right? Like, it doesn't really matter.
Just
there's no instant speed pyroclasm effect or anything that that Autumn could be playing here. So,
and that is going to do it. Seth Manfield works his way through a rough game 2, but gets the job done and secures a top 8 slot. So very, very well done by Seth, kind of working through that tough game. And as much as Autumn had to feel like they picked up a win, kind of like, okay, I'll take it in game 2, Seth had to feel that way too, because Autumn flooded really hard in game 3.
Yeah, again, Autumn had an ideal opener, but really needed to follow that up with Yasharn, Omnath. That Escape to the Wilds was basically a total whiff. I mean, you look at the top 5 cards and it was all lands and explorers. So, you know, and Seth, on the other hand, with just kind of that ideal start that he needs to be able to be successful in this matchup, Dreadhorde Butcher into 3-drop, into Collected Company or another threat is what he needed, and that's what he had.
That's right. So again, if you're a fan of Seth Manfield, hey, He's in. That's it. That's a top 8 for Seth Manfield. If you're a fan of Autumn Burchett, they still have multiple chances to make it into the top 8. This is not over yet. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more from the 2020 season grand finals. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here of the 2020 season grand finals. Martial Cyclist with Paul Cheon. And we just watched a really up and down match between two really top tier players and two players near the top of the standings as well. Ultimately, it was Seth Manfield who came out victorious and secured that top 8 seat. We had a chance to catch up with Seth with day 9 right now.
The second player to qualify for top 8 qualified for this event in 2 different ways. It's Seth Manfield. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That was a pretty dramatic match against Autumn Burchett. And some players have been talking about Jund Sacrifice being substantially weaker in this historic format as compared to the Mythic Invitational. I mean, what's your read on it? Yeah,
I mean, I've actually won all 4 matches I played with Jund Sacrifice. So there's a lot of Yusharans that are running around, but
yeah.
my teammates, I kind of have a way of stealing luck from teammates who also play the same deck. So it's been working out for me. We at least have a few answers to Omnath, and yeah.
If you have to siphon luck from people, I mean, that's certainly an effective technique. And take notes, anyone who's trying to win championships. I did want to ask, often you tend to be a little bit understated. You're very calm in a lot of interviews. But yesterday we saw you in the background, like jumping for joy, running back and forth. What was going on in that moment? What were you so happy about?
Yeah, so I was just kind of, sometimes I do that after I finish a match. I just kind of go like pace around or perhaps have to use the bathroom and I'm holding it in, whatever may be the case. No, I do that. I do that in between rounds. Like, what am I supposed to do between rounds? Like, I just want to play more Magic. So I will do a little running, a little dance for sure.
We love to see it. And, you did say that you just want to be playing more Magic and you don't get to anymore because you were just given wins all the way through, officially a 10-2 record to end day 2 going into day 3. How are you going to celebrate tonight? What are you going to do? Are you going to just play more Magic? Do you get a chance to chill?
I mean, I'll be thinking about how to make less punts like I did against Autumn with that, not knowing what Red Cap Melee did, for instance, was one of my poorer plays this tournament. But I guess I don't know what it is. But I guess I'm just running good or something. But here I am.
Well, it's been fun to watch you in action, Seth. Good luck tomorrow, and let's head back to the casting desk to find out who else is going to qualify for the top 8.
Thanks.
He said, "Here I am." It's like, what else do you want from me? I'm here. And I gotta say, Paul, it's interesting to note how the mistakes that he acknowledged there on that last question with Day 9, they just rolled right off him. It didn't really seem to affect him that much.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. There's nothing you can do once you've made that mistake, right? So you learn from your mistake and you move on, and that's exactly what he did. I'm sure he's gonna probably replay that match and kind of see where else maybe there were some flaws, but that's really how you get better. Like those, when you make those mistakes, you're like, oh my God, I probably should have done something different. As long as you learn and you don't make it again, that's how you get better. That's how you improve. And so, again, Seth has been playing this game for long enough. I'm sure he's made his fair share of mistakes in the past, and he'll probably make some more in the future. But, to be able to brush it off and make sure that you're composed for the next match, I mean, that's what kind of makes for, a true professional.
It is. And Seth is that, no doubt about it, into the top 8 yet again. Now, we've still got more action for this round here, Paul, before we move on to the next one. We've got Emma Handy against Chris Larson. And these two players come in with a 5-4 record. Now, that puts them in a very precarious position. This is kind of the end of the line for whoever loses this match as far as controlling your own destiny, being able to just win out the rest of the tournament and guarantee that top 8 slot. As it stands, we're in game number 3 here, Paul. Emma Handy versus Chris Larson. They're ready to face off Omnath Ramp versus Rakdos Arcanist for Chris Larson. And again, a very important match for these players because a win keeps you on track for top 8 with another couple of wins over the last 2 rounds. A loss puts you into precarious territory. You could still top 8, but you're going to have to win out, and then you're going to have to cross your fingers.
Yeah. And Chris Larson is actually the only person playing the Rakdos Arcanist deck in the field, which is a bit surprising because, after the last event, I heard so many people saying good things about the deck. It's the best Thoughtseize deck in the format. It plays a lot like decks in older formats because everything is really cheap and it feels kind of like you're playing like a Delver deck in some respects. And yet, at the end of the day, only one person ended up submitting this deck for the event. I actually expected more people to play this deck, given that they now actually have a reasonable answer to one of the best cards in the matchup against them, which was Leyline of the Void. They had access to Speed the Swarm, but still, I think a lot of people just kind of wanted to do, I guess, what they consider to be more powerful things, which is just play what Emma's playing.
That's right. We do see Feed the Swarm in hand here for Larson. Remember, this is game number 3 between these two. This is the decider. Stitcher's Supplier on the battlefield doing its thing for Larson. And boy, this is one of the nice little 1-2 punches that this deck offers. Village Rites to sacrifice it really fills up the graveyard quickly and keeps your hand stocked up as well.
Yeah, but Chris does want to find some action here. Very highly reactive hand. And again, I've already stressed this before, but you don't really kind of want to get to this late game here. You want to be able to get off to a pretty quick start. Something like a young Pyromancer or a Dreadhorde Arcanist is kind of the ideal start for Chris Larson's deck.
Yeah, it's a very strange draw from Larson. It's all card draw and, as you mentioned, reactive spells. Yeah. Oh, hello. There's Kroxa now. So that could be the type of card that Chris needs to get things rolling in a forward direction here. He's going to run out Kroxa, and that graveyard's already well stocked to be able to escape Kroxa next turn.
Yeah. Emma does have the Ether Gust here for the first escape, unless Chris Larson is able to find a Thoughtseize off the top. That would be ideal for him. Wow, so Emma is, with all the Fabled Passages, has got to be getting pretty close to be able to just escape that Uro.
Right. 2 Fabled Passage on the board, 1 in hand as well.
But more importantly, Emma is 2 lands away, 2 turns away from just casting Genesis Ultimatum.
Yeah, Chris, with the Dreadhorde Arcanist and the Cruxa as possible options, finally has found some way to start applying pressure in Emma Handy's direction rather than being purely reactive, but has hit a bit of a bottleneck here.
Yeah, I think he's deciding whether or not he wants to escape the Cruxa here, but maybe is concerned about a potential Ether Gust from Emma. And if that's the case, perhaps it might be better to just run out the Arcanist, play the Shatter Skull Smashing untapped, and put the Lurrus into your hand. And I don't think a Thoughtseize has been cast yet. So, you know, sure, Emma has a decision here. Could choose to Ether Gust. Oh, there is a Thoughtseize in the graveyard off a Stitcher Supplier. So definitely don't want to get Thoughtseize. That is huge, right?
Right. That feels real bad. Yeah,
the entire game plan here is to try to resolve that Genesis Ultimatum. Sure, Emma can probably escape the Uro next turn, but very, very likely for it to die against the Rakdos deck.
Mm-hmm. And it will here as well. You see Spark Harvest, Feed the Swarm in hand. A few different answers for Larson to get rid of it.
I wonder how many forests that they have. Interesting to see that they actually fetched forest. I don't know if you want to do that, because if you somehow draw another forest, all of a sudden you have 3 forests.
For your ultimatum.
They have island and table passage. It doesn't matter. Never mind.
This is interesting, though. A Grafdigger's Cage off the top means that Emma Handy could just get Uro out of the graveyard and then slam Grafdigger's Cage and kind of lock up Uro's nemesis over there in the graveyard, Cruxa.
Yeah, no, this
That's sweet.
This is great. Now, Chris, of course, has to kill this Uro. And what's really nice is not even going to take a whole lot of damage. You feel like you should be taking a lot more damage when you're killing an Uro, but it's only going to be 3. So you feed the Swarm, you kill the Uro, and then you don't even necessarily have to deal with the Grafdigger's Cage now. You can just play the Lurrus this turn to just have more pressure on the battlefield and then run out the Abrade next turn.
All right, so that is the exact line that Larson takes. A good close game 3 here, but tick-tock on that Genesis Ultimatum.
Yeah, I mean,
can
now.
Emma fire it off here? Yeah, right?
Just needs to not get forest.
Right. And here it is. Genesis Ultimatum for Emma Handy. What can she hit? Ooh. Not bad.
Oh, right. With the Grafdigger's, another Nambo.
Yes.
With Grafdigger's Cage, you can't actually put the creatures onto the battlefield.
It does. So chat says, doesn't Cage stop Ultimatum? And the answer is yes and no. They can't be put on the battlefield, but with Ultimatum, you can choose to put them in your hand instead. So Emma didn't miss per se, but it's more like a draw 5, right?
Yeah. But you know what? Honestly, finding that second Cage was pretty big because Chris Larson had the answer for the first one. So now he's going to need to find a second Abrade to deal with that Grafdigger's Cage that's in play. However, might not even be interested necessarily, given the fact that there's an Uro in Emma's graveyard.
Right. Yeah, that's a legitimate concern there. Here comes Yasharn onto the battlefield. Is there anything left to dig up with Yasharn? Oh, yeah, perfect.
Oh, just enough.
Just the right amount.
Although, yeah, just enough. The Fabled Passage probably still has some islands or mountains to fetch, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, honestly, Emma's been able to look through a lot of cards, but, I mean, Chris has the answer to this 4-core. He can still kind of get in, and Emma doesn't have a really huge follow-up here.
Yeah, I think we're going to be paying a lot of attention to the top of Emma Handy's library, because if Emma can find, another Ultimatum or just some way to really keep pushing forward with the cards, then she can probably find a win here. But if not, the window could close quickly as Larson's attacking pretty significantly here. Hello. How about a Kenrith the Return King off the top of the library from that explore. That's exactly what Emma wants to see.
Yeah, that is huge. And also has the Balaget recovery in hand to get it back if Chris Larson does have a way to get it off the battlefield.
Boy, and it looks like Emma can set up for even some card draw with Kenrith, given how much mana she's got available. If she gets to untap with this Kenrith, it's going to be ugly. Yeah, also, is this a nearly lethal attack, right?
Right. I mean, Chris Larson is at 11 life here.
And now he's at 2. Ouch.
Wow.
And he does not have proper blockers here to survive another turn against the trample that Kenrith gives either.
Right, and Chris Larson now is going to have to use the Spark Harvest to kill the Kenrith, but given how much mana Emma has in play, Emma can simply return the Kenrith with the Balaget recovery to her hand, recast it haste, and attack for the win.
Wow, and it looks like it's going to be Feed the Swarm down to 1 for Larson before using the Spark Harvest, but as you said, with so much mana available to Emma Handy, it looks like she has a clean line of victory here to get the job done. With Larson at a very low 1 life. So let's see if Emma goes for it. There it is. Balaget recovery. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I'll take a Kenrith. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that'll be it.
And that is going to be the match going to Emma Handy. Just going to make sure that she doesn't tap that red mana by going manual here.
Do not want to lose to Auto Tapper here.
Right.
Could actually also play the Yusharn.
But in comes Kenrith, the Return King. And that is going to return victory to Emma Handy, who stays alive for a guaranteed top 8 slot. She will need to win the next 2 rounds in order to secure that top 8 for sure. But this was a very big step in that direction. Now, Chris Larson is going to be 5-5 and is going to have to win the next 2 rounds and then cross his fingers to see if he can still make it into top 8. But for now, it's Emma Handy who stays alive for top 8 with 2 more wins to go. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more Magic action here from the 2020 season grand finals. Don't go anywhere.